Good afternoon, Louisiana, and welcome to At the Book here on bet.NOLA.com. It is your weekly betting preview for the sports world. It's Halloween weekend. It's a brilliant sports weekend, maybe the best one of the year between college football, NFL, World Series could be decided this weekend, or else it'll certainly get into the later stages. NBA, NHL, everything rolling right now, and we will talk about it all. We are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. That's Jim Derry and Devin Jackson. I'm Zach Ewing, and we're ready to roll, guys. And it starts early. We got a great Thursday night football game too. But before we get started, want to remind you that you can now sign up for the Caesars Sportsbook app. You can go to NOLA.com/Caesars and sign up now. And if you do that, you get a $100 free bet bonus. So what can you say no to that? Free $100 at launch whenever mobile betting does come, which we expect before the end of the year. And in-person betting, guys, could be as early as Monday from what I'm hearing. Nothing confirmed yet, but we're getting real close on this.
I signed up yesterday, and it was super easy. And if I can do it, anybody can do it.
If Jim Derry can do it, anybody can. I'm going to tell our marketing team to add that to the ad.
Sounds like a slogan.
That's right. If Jim Derry can do it, anybody can do it. So NOLA.com/Caesars. Sign up for the Sportsbook app. Be ready to go when mobile betting goes live. It's coming soon. It's going to be a nice Christmas present for all of us in Louisiana, and hopefully even before that, maybe even a nice little Thanksgiving present. So we're getting toward that time of year. Let's get right into it. Thursday night football tonight. The Packers and the Cardinals, 6-1 against 7-0. It's just a bloody brilliant Thursday night football game, and it really is. Even though COVID has kind of wreaked havoc on this. Davante Adams not playing for the Packers. Alan Lazard, who would have stepped in for Davante Adams, not playing for the Packers. I think they have a coach on the COVID list too. And then on the other side, J.J. Watt has had season-ending shoulder surgery. So both teams a little bit less than full strength, but still just a really good game, guys.
Probably one of the best we're going to get this season. Two really good teams. And it feels like every year the Packers are always in this type of game where they're playing a really good opponent on prime time. So hopefully they look like the Packers we've been seeing the last 6 or so weeks and not the week one Packers. So I know they're going to be missing two of their top targets at receiver, but I think Aaron Rodgers will put on the show tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to spoil our picks because I think, Jim, you and I both have big Bucs picks on this game because there's a bet I really like, and I know there's one you like too. But it's interesting to see that this line, a wide receiver usually not worth that much on the spread, but when it came down Monday that Davante Adams was doubtful to play, and it's been confirmed he didn't even travel with the team, but when word came down he was doubtful to play, this line went from like Cardinals -4 to 6 in an instant, and now it's up to 6.5.
Before I get to that, I just want to ask Devin if he still wants to eliminate Thursday night football. I mean, you got 7-0 against 6-1, Devin.
Shots fired.
That's true. Look, I still don't like the premise of it, but I'll take good football when I can get it.
Yeah, what channel is your TV going to be on at 7:20 tonight?
Yeah, it will be on. It will be on either Fox or NFL Network. Yeah,
that's right.
I agree with you, Zach, and I don't know that I've ever seen a non-quarterback change the line this much, starting out at 4, going to 6.5. Now, they do lose Lazard, but the line changed before we even heard about Lazard, so it had nothing to do with him. It was all about Davante Adams. They do lose the defensive coordinator as well, but, we'll get into the picks, but, it seems to me when you still have Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones, I'm not sure why you would change the line so much. And then the line didn't move at all when J.J. Watt was out. So, really some strangeness going on here. And from what I understand, people in the know think that this line will even go up further. They think it'll go to 7 by game time. We'll see if that happens or not. But a very strange line to say the least.
Yeah, I'll throw out I just saw the stat, and I can't remember if it was 7-0 or 7-1 straight up. Matt LaFleur as Packers head coach, 7-0 or 7-1 without Devontae Adams, straight up. Now, they're not always playing a 7-0 team in those situations. This is a difficult assignment on a short week. But the point is, Devontae Adams, a very good player, might be the best receiver in football, but that doesn't mean the Packers are helpless without him.
Well, here's a stat for you, too, though, that goes the other way. So, I mean, kind of mixed bag. Over the past 10 years or so, and I don't know the exact number, but teams traveling more than 1,500 miles on a short week, which obviously this is because the Packers played on Sunday, or in the neighborhood of 40% against the spread on Thursday night. So it's a tough task for Green Bay for sure, but I don't think that takes into account how big this line really is.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting game for sure. I want to get into cashing in with Carville for this week. We did not have him pick the Thursday night game simply because we don't want y'all who are in the contest to have to make your picks by tonight. We only give you a little bit of time, and so we choose the Saturday, Sunday, Monday games, and so that's what we did this week. But you can play cashing in with Carville, make your picks against James Carville, win monthly prizes. The October prizes are going to come down the chute next week for anybody who finishes ahead of what Carville did in October. And quite frankly, he's been not very good in October. September, nobody beat him. We didn't hand out a single prize. Saved us some money on the budget. But October, we will hand out up to 10 prizes for the top people who beat him. Go to NOLA.com/cashing-in. Submit your picks before all the college football starts on Saturday. Just got to get them in. I think we put 10:45 a.m. on it, so just get your picks in there. And if you beat Carville, you win some monthly prizes for October, and then we've got the big prizes for the season-long winners. So let's watch Cashing In with Carville for this week. Talked to him this morning, and here it is. Well, this is Cashing In with Carville for Week 8 of the NFL season. It's October the 28th. It's Halloween season. We've got a lot to get to here. I'm Zach Ewing along with James Carville. And James, it's a big week in college football, even without an LSU game. And then at LSU, it's like coaching search season. And so that's almost double the fun of actually playing games.
Boy, I tell you, I don't know. Every 9 out of 10 conversations I have about the LSU football coach.
And what do you think? I mean, what are you hearing, or what?
I know nothing. I actually hadn't talked to Scott in a few days, and if he
he's
told
busy.
Me, he's got other things on his mind. If he told me, I wouldn't tell anybody else. But honestly, he hasn't. I don't know. But I know a couple of things. It's going to be somebody that's already done it at a big program. I mean, that's pretty clear. And we were talking before, and the name that I found interesting was the Oklahoma coach, Lincoln Riley.
Sure.
I have no idea. And what happens is the agents call. All right. And of course, Scott knows Trace Armstrong, and knows Jimmy Sexton, he knows all of them. And so I think the way this works is, let's just say, Lincoln Riley may have no intention of leaving University of Oklahoma. Scott may have no intention of hiring him, but the agent would call. And they're like everybody else. They're pretty good at keeping a secret.
Sure.
Yeah, but the thing that intriguing about Lincoln Riley is he has a reputation of Tyler Murray, the Bradford. He's got some quarterbacks that do well in the NFL, and I hear that there's
Baker Mayfield. Yep.
Baker Mayfield. I mean, isn't it? Yeah. Baker Mayfield, and I hear there's a hot recruit from Louisiana that's a pretty good quarterback. And if you just say all things as being equal, that might be the one thing you want on the scale,
A hot recruit with a famous name, and I mean, that may be a consideration for sure. Lincoln Riley, would he leave Oklahoma? I know we were talking off the air. You said you think LSU's a much better job, and I think a lot of people would agree.
Look, Brody Miller in Atlantic wrote about it, and Brody is a very good reporter. And if you think about it, he's coming to the SEC. All right, he's in a big, whatever it is, Big 12. Okay, that is not hard to win the Big 12, go 11-1. Get in the college playoff. We smoked them so bad in 2019. I went to that game. Jeez, we could have beat them 100. We could have scored. Each could have scored 100, and we just let off on in the second half. So now he's coming in the SEC. So he asked himself, here I'm at Oklahoma. The high school football in Oklahoma is not nearly as good as in Louisiana. I got Texas poaching on me. I got Oklahoma State I got to deal with every other day, and I go to Baton Rouge. And if I can just, run the table close, 80% of the table in Louisiana, I already got a top 5 recruiting class. And, I'm in a new neighborhood, and I think that the LSU job is significantly better than the Oklahoma job. Now, it may be that he's there and his family likes it, and you don't know the other intangibles, but I bet you, if he's interested, his agent has already called. Now, Scott is the athletic director. He's not a dictator. All right, he's got a president. He's got a board. They're generally going to trust him. They're going to give him a lot of leeway, but there's internal politics there. But the Lincoln Riley name,
it intrigues you a little bit.
A little bit, yes. And James Franklin, but he's about to lose 3 in a row.
We'll talk about that. We have James Franklin, another candidate, Mel Tucker at Michigan State. That's a good segue to get into the picks this week. There's lots of names flying around out there for the LSU coaching position. One of them is Mel Tucker at Michigan State. They're hosting Michigan this week. It's probably the biggest Michigan State game this century. They're both undefeated. They're both in the top 10. Maybe I'm forgetting something else, but clearly a big game in East Lansing. Michigan is laying 4 points. Where are you going here?
Going with the home team.
Sparty.
I'll tell you, you got time for one little story about Michigan State?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the 1992 campaign, we had a debate on what was in fact in Lansing. But we had debate prep in Ypsilanti, which is like Ann Arbor, it's right there. And, I run every day. Of course, I'd come up from Arkansas, and it was cold in that part of Michigan. So I went to the sundry shop at the hotel, and I bought a sweatshirt. It's a Michigan sweatshirt. So with my mind totally on politics and not even thinking, we get to the hotel in Lansing, and of course there's a whole crowd of people out front, and it's the whole debate. So I go take my run, and I run out with a Michigan sweatshirt. I lasted about 45 seconds. I had to run back in the hotel and go in a sundry shop there and buy a Michigan State sweatshirt. They were not going to have any of that shit. We had a Michigan sweatshirt.
So the rivalry is real, is what you're saying.
It is particularly real on Michigan State side. All right, you have MUU and, the prestigious state university, and they look down on them. And Michigan State's quite a good university, don't get me wrong. But I don't know if there's a more aggrieved university in a kind of Michigan State, Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina.
The little brother syndrome, you're saying. Yeah.
Oh, man. And I'll tell you, watch that game. Those fans are going to be on fire. I promise you.
And that's why you're going with the home team there. So
yeah, I guess Michigan's undefeated. I think I lost with them. At some level, Michigan football is always gutless at some point, Yeah.
Well, and both those teams have gotten away with it a couple of times. They've won some close games. So we'll see who can survive there.
Yeah. Yeah.
One team that has not had to get away with anything is Georgia. They've been thumping everybody. They play Florida, world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville this weekend. Always a big game in the SEC East, usually decides the SEC East. This year, it does not look to be too competitive. Georgia minus 14 against Florida.
I take the points.
Take the Gators.
Georgia is good. All right. And, somebody said they may have 17 first round draft choice and everything. Florida they're a little bit like us. They really underperform. And it's a big game. I think that, they kind of rested up here. And I look for them to put up a fight.
All right. Another big game in the SEC. The line surprised a lot of people on this one. Ole Miss at Auburn, and it's Auburn favored by 2.5 at home.
Well, my contrarian method blew up in my face last week, but I'm going to stick with the contrarian method and go with the home team here.
We're good.
Ole
All right,
Miss
we're
had
good.
game of the century against us, but a lot of people have game of the century against us.
And I mean, listen, Ole Miss has had big game after big game. At some point, you think they'll let down. So
Right.
that's certainly a possibility. And then our last college game of the day without LSU, we're going to do 4 today. You mentioned him, Penn State, James Franklin, maybe with his eyes on other jobs, LSU, USC, we don't know. Playing in Columbus, if you're distracted, this is not who you want to play. Ohio State's absolutely rolling right now, and the Buckeyes are minus 18.5.
And I'll eat the 18.5.
All right. So the
We're gonna
Buckeyes,
have 3 touchdowns.
I mean, they have been scoring points in barrels.
Probably if you win by 21, you're good.
That's right.
18.5.
We'll move on to the NFL.
I mean, I think they got Oregon beat them early, and they look like they might be. Reports out of Columbus that they're not that good this year have been greatly exaggerated.
I think you're right. I said on another show, I think the most likely national championship at this point is Georgia against Ohio State, because they just seem like they're the two teams that are rolling and are most likely to get there. To shift gears to the NFL. I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
Got to beat Alabama in the conference championship.
That's true. There's a guy named Nick who may have a say in that. That is for sure.
I bet you that Scott has talked to Nick about this LSU job. I think Nick would tell him the truth. They're good friends.
You think so? Oh, that's interesting.
I think Scott's talked to 50 different people.
I mean, and maybe 50 more this week. Who knows?
And all of them know something about college football. This is not going to be a spur of the moment hire. This is going to be well thought out.
Not at all. Not at all. We'll move on to the NFL, where you had your struggles last week as well. Let me ask you this. Monday night, have you ever seen an uglier game and been happier at the end than when the Saints survived Seattle?
Yeah, our defense is just stunning. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But if you have 10 bad calls and 6 go against you, you say, well, if there's 10 bad calls, 8.5 go against us. I mean, that was so much offensive interference. It was a joke. And then that personal foul, when the guy comes up to our guy, shoves him back, our guy shoves the other guy back, and he gives us the goddamn penalty. I mean, it just, like, I'm watching the game. I didn't just see that, did I? And the guy was watching me with me said, yeah, you saw that. I mean, it was just as blatant. How can you miss that? It was that call in the Rams game in the Dome. So son of a bitch is looking right at the plate. There were 2 penalties.
Yeah. And in a game like that, 15 yards is a lot of yards. Is it
a lot of yards? You're on the sideline, you shove a guy out of the way who was totally had you covered. The referee was right there. I mean, again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think, I think it literally would be stupid and possible that Goodell has told the referees to screw the Saints when you can. That's a $20 billion league. All right. They're not, they love that. But the Marie Laveau's voodoo is still around here somewhere. It just happens. And it doesn't happen like on close calls. I was watching the World Series and some guy, they said they called a strike and, and it should have been a ball and people were going crazy. They showed a replay and I think, like if a call like that, part of baseball. I mean, it wasn't like he threw it in the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
Well, I mean, listen, at some point it's bound to come back and help the Saints, but that NFC Championship will hurt for a long time.
I think it is, and you would have thought, and see, I mean, we got bad calls there, and you get 2 bad calls in a place like Seattle, but you got to say our defense is good. And I don't know if you agree with this, but it looks like Peyton doesn't have a lot of confidence in Winston.
It sure looks like that. I mean, I will say, watching some film last week, he had a couple of shots late and the throws were fine and the receivers didn't make plays. So they did take some shots and the receivers got to come up with the ball too.
I looked at his completion percentage, actually pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of short throws, but yeah, he's. I mean, I think he's still a work in progress for sure.
Well, he's got the ability, and if he gets better later, we might be in the hunt in this thing.
And it could start with the Bucs this week. I mean, if you want to win the division, you have to beat the Bucs at home. I think that's fair to say.
I don't pick the Saints. I always pick the Saints, but I kind of halfway like them.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard other people agree with that. Let's get to our other games. Titans and Colts. Speaking of games teams have to win if they want to be in the hunt. The Colts get the Titans at home if they want to stay in the AFC South. Probably have to win. They're getting a point here.
I'll take the Colts, and the Titans are very good. They're good last week. And, Derrick Henry is like a human locomotive or something. But it's kind of an ebb and flow, and the Colts are not bad.
No, they're not, and they're at home. So
yeah, they're not bad at home.
Big game out in LA, the Patriots at the Chargers, who are -5.5.
I like the 5.5.
Taking the pass with the points.
Chargers were. I was high on the Chargers, after week 3 or something like that, but they seem to be not quite as good as I think I thought they were. It's still pretty good.
It'll be an interesting game, offense against defense there. And then on Sunday Night Football, Cowboys -2.5 up in Minnesota.
I take the home team.
I take Minnesota with the points. So
I still believe that the Cowboys get an extra point because they're the Cowboys, and the odds makers know that. I mean, it's mythology maybe, but I don't think it's mythology. I think that the Cowboys. Everybody wants to bet on the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, they're popular again. They're good again too. So
they're good. I mean, it took Jerry a long time to get the right combo here, but it looks like he might have it.
All right. For a little lagniappe before we go, I have a different kind of question for you. Preferred Halloween candy?
Well, the candy that I like a Snicker.
All right.
It's not very pretty.
It's a solid choice. It's
a solid choice. Or actually lemon jelly beans. I'm so mad at Lifesavers when they took the lemon Lifesavers out, I could choke them.
and you got to tell me one candy you can't stand that's going right in the trash.
One candy I can't stand. I don't like Milky Way.
Interesting. So Snickers, but not Milky Way.
Yeah, I like Snickers. I don't know how much difference there is, but I just I grew up with I'm the only guy that doesn't like fried chicken. People just go, when I was a kid. And I think what happened was I just decided I didn't like it, and everybody tried to pressure me to eat it. And I just was so horrible. I like chicken salad sandwich or anything like that. But it's just weird. And I can't justify my likes and dislikes, but I was 77, so not likely to change.
Not going to change now. James, we appreciate the insight, the picks. We're going to do a little bit better this week.
We're coming back. Jeff Duncan is busting my ass right now, and I have dinner with it tonight, and I got to listen to his shit on top of all this other stuff.
All right. Well, we're going to get back at Jeff this week. James Carville, cashing in with Carville. You can play at NOLA.com/cashing in. James, until next week, we appreciate it.
That.
All right. All right, so James Carville, very talkative this morning, as usual. Loved his story about Michigan and Michigan State. Got to get the right color sweatshirt up in there, and Michigan State with the little brother syndrome. So we'll talk more college football in just a second. But for the time being, another topic he hit on was the Saints, and he said, he doesn't pick the Saints games, but if he did, he would be leaning toward the Saints. The Saints have their biggest game of the season thus far, or at least biggest, I think, since the opener against Green Bay. At home against the Bucs. If you're going to win the NFC South,
well, I'm not sure if we lost him there, Devin, but I think what he was going to say is, and he's right, if you're going to win the NFC South, you've got to beat Tampa Bay. Not only beat them, but you got to beat them twice, because we know Tampa Bay isn't going to lose a ton of games.
Yeah, they're a well-oiled machine already. They pretty much come in do what they need to do to win the game and then get out. I mean, we saw that, last week on Thursday Night Football against the Eagles and really throughout the season, with the exception against the Rams. So, like you said, this is the biggest game of the season for the Saints. And you would think, especially in that win on Monday night, I think the Saints definitely held back a little bit on the offensive side of the ball to kind of preserve some of the things they may be wanting to throw out against Tampa Bay. And also just the receiver position being so barren, but we saw yesterday the Saints got Mark Ingram, should help with the workload of Alvin Kamara because he had an insane amount of touches over the last couple of weeks, and definitely interested to see what happens in this game. I think this will be a good one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The dome you would think would be rocking. I apologize, guys. We've lost power 4 times at Advocate World headquarters here in Baton Rouge this morning, and it's like mostly sunny outside, so I don't understand what's going on. I didn't lose power there, but I lost internet, so who knows? The world of technology is undefeated against all of us. But yeah, as I was saying, I think you got to win this game if you're the Saints, and I assume what you guys were saying is that Sean Payton probably pulling out some stops to make that happen this week.
Well, we hadn't got that far, Zach, but that's exactly where I was going to go next. Sean Payton loves these kinds of games. He typically fares well in them, other than the 3-year 7-9 stretch when they just stunk up the joint and had all kinds of issues. Sean Payton, you can bet that he spent much of the last 3 weeks preparing for this game. And you could make a point that they didn't look all that great against Washington. And certainly, some people think they looked terrible against Seattle, and it was an ugly game. And it was an ugly game in a sense, but if you look through if you don't just look at the score and you look at some of the things that were done, especially with Jameis Winston, and I've talked about this on Datitude all week long, all the talking heads are talking about, oh, woe is Jameis Winston. He's not a good quarterback and blah, blah, blah. I've seen progression every single week from this guy. And last week, if he doesn't have the big drops, you've got Kevin White along the right sideline who just flat out drops the football, and that would have been a touchdown, or put it this way, it would have certainly put him deep into the red zone. Then the very next play, you got Kenny Stills, who's no longer a Saint, dropping the football. Then you have a play where Traquan Smith is running the wrong route, and if he keeps running, it's an easy completion early in the game. That
might have been a touchdown too. Yeah,
it easily could have been 27-10 instead of 13-10, and the defense was lights out. We talk about how it's hard to run against Tampa Bay. Well, it's pretty doggone hard to run against the Saints too. And not only that, it's pretty hard to throw against them as well. I mean, this is one of the better Saints defenses I've seen since the Dome Patrol days. And look, I'm trying not to be a homer. I'm trying to call it like I always do and see it the way that it is. And people hate me when I think the Saints aren't going to do well. But this is actually a game where and we'll get to it a little bit more when we talk about our picks, but this is a game where I think the Saints match up well against Tampa, and they showed it last year. They're going to put a lot of pressure on them. Lattimore is going to cover Mike Evans like a blanket, and it all comes down to if they can cover Chris Godwin. I don't know if Gronk's playing, but if he does, it'll be Jenkins on him. So, I mean, it's not a bad matchup for the Saints, and Tampa Bay isn't as good as everybody thinks they are.
The Saints beat them twice last year, handily in the regular season. And then the playoff game is the one everyone remembers, obviously, and for good reason. But people don't remember that the Saints were leading that game and driving down to get points. Jared Cook fumbles. They turned it over again later. Yeah, I mean, people remember that. But the Bucs did not dominate that game by any stretch. They got the turnovers, which the Saints were getting in the regular season games. But these are pretty evenly matched teams in my eyes. And I agree with that pick. The Saints at home should not be 5.5-point underdogs in this game. I don't believe. Now, the wide receivers are a problem. They've got to play better. Traquan Smith has got to play better than he played on Monday. Now, give him one because it was rust. He was just coming off of IR, but he's got to be better.
Zach, I will also say, too, that if you look at this spread just purely on numbers, what you're saying is Tampa Bay is basically 8 points better than the Saints. Because if this were played on a neutral field, the spread, going by the numbers, if you're giving 2.5 to the Saints at home, you're saying Tampa Bay is 8 points better than the Saints. And basically, when you're doing power rankings and such, and you're trying to figure out spreads, the best team in the NFL is usually about 8 points better than an average team. Okay. So you're saying the Saints are an average team, and I'm not buying it. The Saints are, I'm not saying they're a top 5 team, but I think they're certainly a top 10 team. And if you're going by that, this line is very skewed.
Yeah. And that means that if this line were to hold when they play in Tampa later this year, it's going to be a double-digit spread,
That's right.
It just doesn't seem right to me. I don't think that, especially with the way the Saints play, because they will keep the score down. And maybe we'll all be talking on odds and ends on Monday afternoon about how the Bucs, look like world beaters, and they certainly have been playing well. But I don't understand the spread, and I like the Saints here. Devin, are you on the same train?
Yeah, I like the Saints as well. Divisional games, especially in the NFC South, they're hardly ever blowouts. I know the Saints got beat, by double digits against the Panthers, but even that game was pretty competitive throughout. So I feel pretty confident that the Saints will be in this game and compete and cover the spread. I just worry about how well will the receivers play, because the Bucs secondary is full of holes, but if you got receivers dropping passes, running the wrong routes, that's when the Bucs can get a few turnovers, and then the game can become lopsided then. So receiving, kind of the receiving aspect, it has to be better, just based on the fact that, that's the weakest area for the Bucs. You got to go after their secondary to win. But I think the Saints defense will be certainly up to the challenge. And, I believe Marcus Davenport played a few snaps as well on Monday night, and he was able to make an impact. So
he played real well.
And we know how well Cam Jordan plays against the Bucs as well. So I expect the pass.
And Onyemata comes back.
So they're getting a lot of guys coming back this week. So I feel pretty confident about the Saints' chances to cover.
And there's even a chance Michael Thomas comes back. They haven't practiced yet this week, so we don't know what his status is. They're going to practice. In fact, they're probably practicing right now for the first time all week. So because of the Monday game and the travel and all that. So we'll see about Michael Thomas. But certainly the NFL has a way of humbling you, and the Bucs have been playing real well. And it just kind of feels like maybe this is the time that they get humbled.
Let me ask you, Zach, what do you think Sean Payton has been telling those receivers all week? Those are the kinds when you have drops like that, or any position that has an awful game, the next week they generally come back and play well under Sean Payton, because that big sign that says "Do your job" in the practice facility. I guarantee you, "Do your job" has been all week long. They've been talking about it.
Yeah, because they were the position group that let them down, almost cost them on Monday night. But we talked about how difficult of a spot this was for the Saints. They got the first half of it done. Now they can focus on Sunday. And they get the Falcons, by the way, coming in to town next week. So it's not like the big game's end, and the Falcons are playing pretty well. The other big-time Louisiana team, headliner LSU, is off this week. I'm not sure their fans really care. In fact, if they want to take another week before they have to play Alabama, I'm sure their fans would be okay with that too. But they are off. So I wanted to take the time to kind of reset the national title race in college football, because there are some big games this week. So here are the top 6 to win the national championship at Caesars Sportsbook. And again, you can sign up for that Sportsbook app at NOLA.com/Caesars. But Georgia is the favorite. They're plus 120. They're almost odds on. They have Florida this weekend. So you see on the right side, a lot of big games this week. Alabama off in preparation for playing LSU. Ohio State's got Penn State. Oklahoma's also at home, a game they should handle against Texas Tech. Cincinnati is in New Orleans against Tulane. And then the game of the week probably is Michigan. Can they stay in the national title race and really insert themselves into the thick of the national title race by beating an undefeated Michigan State team? Michigan State, by the way, is in the next group at, I believe, 80-1. There might even be somebody in between them. So they're super long shots, even though they're undefeated. But one of those two teams you feel like eliminated this week. Devin, what are your thoughts on the battle of the Wolverine State? I shouldn't call it that. The Wolverine and Spartan State.
I think it's going to be a classic Big Ten game. It's going to be low scoring, a lot of defensive played, special teams, kind of deciding the game. It's going to be a classic Big Ten matchup. I think it's probably the big noon kickoff or something like that for this game as well. So those games are always typically low scoring and not super interesting in terms of offensive output. But I think the defenses both will play well. I think it'll come down to who has the ball last. I think it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be a field goal or a touchdown pretty much game throughout. And this game is definitely going to it's certainly going to knock out Michigan or Michigan State from getting to the Big Ten championship and national title consideration. So it's going to be big for either team, whoever wins the game, but it definitely will go a long way in deciding who could get into the playoff. Because if, Michigan wins this week, but then loses in a couple weeks, and then end up being Ohio State at the end of the season, then it gets kind of messy for the Big Ten, and they may miss out on the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point because the Big Ten is very deep at the top this year. You have these teams. You have Ohio State, obviously, Penn State, Iowa playing real well. All of those teams still, with the exception of Penn State because they have 2 losses now, are still technically in the national title conversation. But the question is, will they start to knock themselves out? Because after this week, you'll only have one undefeated team. It's whoever wins this game. And both of these teams still have to play Penn State and Ohio State down the stretch. So it does get hairy real quick. Bring those odds back up just for a minute. I want to let Jim give his thought. I'm going to keep beating this drum, Jim. Put Cincinnati in the playoff. Put them in.
First off, I want to remind Devin that he now lives in the Central Time Zone, so it's an 11 a.m. game. Devin, get out of Georgia. You're not there anymore, buddy.
Yeah. Big 11 a.m. kickoff doesn't have the same ring to it.
You're right, 100%. Look, 2 things here. First off, there are 2 lines that make 0 sense to me. And I know I've been joking with you about Cincinnati all season long, but that line makes 0 sense. 2,500. I mean, so basically you're saying 25-1 that Cincinnati is going to win the national championship. When, if I had to put a percentage on it, I think they're probably 75% chance to make the playoff at this point. 70 to 75%. Whether they belong in or not, that's a whole nother argument for a whole nother show when we have a lot of time. But they're probably going to get in. And then Alabama at plus 230. I mean, I don't think they're even 50% to get in the playoff. I mean, so you're saying if they get in, basically they're going to win. That line makes 0 sense. If you put 5 cents on Alabama, you're wasting your money. And then the second thing that I would say is, to me, even at plus 120, to me, Georgia is free money. I don't see any team beating Georgia this year unless something super fluky happens in the playoffs. I'm never a bet one against the field kind of guy, and I know that's what this is. But in this case, I'm going to take Georgia, and y'all can all have the field if you want at minus 140, which is basically what it is. If y'all want to make that bet with me right now, I'll take it. I'll give you minus 140, and I'll take the dogs at plus 120 because nobody's beating them this year.
The only thing I'll say to that, Jim, I agree with you on Alabama because they're going to have to beat Georgia twice to get in, not to mention beating Auburn. Can't remember who else they have left. They have LSU obviously left on their schedule. Don't think they played Arkansas yet either, but they're going to have to beat Georgia in the SEC championship game and then most likely beat them again in the playoff to win the national title. And so I agree with you, plus 230. I'm not touching that. I don't think I'm touching Georgia either, though. And the reason I say that is because they're going to have to beat Alabama at least somewhere, either in Atlanta for the SEC championship or in the playoff. And then they're also probably going to have to beat Ohio State. And so
I disagree. I don't think they have to beat Alabama. I mean, they might have to beat them 1 out of 2. Sure,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they'll have to beat them 1 out of 2, which obviously you've got a chance at doing that. But then you've also got Ohio State. So I would put Georgia somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50% to win this thing. So I think plus 120 is about right. I don't think there's an extreme value there. But they're clearly the favorite.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad line. I said the other 2 were bad lines. I don't think it's a bad line. I'm just saying this is one case, and it's a very unusual case because I'm usually a field kind of guy. Weird things happen. I just think from what I've seen this year, unless something fluky happens, and we know that things that weird have happened in the Kirby era, but I just don't see anybody beating this team. Nobody. I mean, I think Kentucky's a really good football team, and what Georgia did to Kentucky just kind of, to me, shows how good they really are.
Auburn's good. They did it to Auburn.
Yeah.
Clemson, we know, has a great defense. but Georgia gave them nothing on offense. So they've been super impressive. I would throw a little sprinkle. I would throw a little sprinkle on Ohio State plus 650 though.
I mean, if you want to waste money, go ahead. They're the Big Ten, Ohio State. They'll roll until they get into the playoffs, and they'll play Cincinnati or they'll play Alabama. If they play Alabama, they'll lose. But if they play Oklahoma or something like that, I mean, sure, they'll get into the national championship game, but they're not going to score against Georgia. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I'd rather put, and I'm not kidding, and I've already done this actually. I'd rather put $10 on Cincinnati because to me, at 25-1, I mean, you're talking about fluky things happen. Unless they're the 4 seed, they've certainly got a decent chance to win against an Ohio State or against Oklahoma or against even an Alabama. I mean, they have a decent chance to win that game. So you talk about fluky things happening. If you give me 25-1 on them being able to win their first game and then somehow fluky things happen and beating Georgia, I'll take that bet, and I already have. So I'll plop $10 on that and see what happens.
Well, and you can hedge at that point. Go ahead, Dev.
I was going to hop in real quick and say I think the seeding definitely matters this year more than anything. Because I mean, I was just running through scenarios in my head. Like, say, what if Georgia says, we're going to lose the SEC championship and be a 2 or 3 seed. That way we don't have to play a certain matchup. So it could be a lot of things happening with that. But I think Cincinnati needs to get a 3 seed because if they get the 4 seed and have to play Georgia in the first one, I don't like their chances to win it all.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they have a great chance. You also got to remember last year Cincinnati played Georgia in the Peach Bowl and they went toe-to-toe with them. I mean, it's different teams, but I don't think they're automatically no chance there in that situation. Right. So it'll be interesting to see.
25-1. I mean, you want to risk $10-20. I mean, to get 250 or 500. I mean, I think that's as good a bet as was on that screen just now.
Well, let's play big bucks. While we're talking about risking and wagering and Jim being confident, let's go ahead and play big bucks. Our Week 7 results. Devin, another good one. I think this was the second straight week you were plus $72. So just plugging along, man. Just turning not a huge profit, but just a small 2-3% profit every week, and that's what we like. We like that grinding. San Diego State winning. You missed on the Ravens. Missed pretty big on the Ravens, but you got just about everything else right.
Yeah, the Ravens definitely let me down, but I should have known that it was a classic game. Ravens playing really well, and just second half it was all Bengals. But I don't regret making that bet. I thought the Ravens were going to at least win the game, but they weren't even close. But other than that, it was a pretty solid week. I think I only got one miss in college and then one miss in NFL, so not bad.
Yeah, I will take that every week. But it wasn't quite a Jim Derry week. He was up $100 again this week, and he's starting to dig himself out of that hole. And you hit a parlay, Jim.
Had a parlay, had a teaser. Man, I mean, that's 3 teasers in a row, Zach. What was our root beer bet? I'm going to win more than I lose on.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and do the math on that. I think you're about even right now. So
yeah, it's pretty close. And
you might need to win one more. Yeah.
I don't know. If I get one ahead, I might have to just stop using them. No, I'm just kidding. Look, Lions to me was a great bet. Jared Goff going out to the Rams. You knew he was going to. He's not a great quarterback, but you knew he was going to probably play his best. Lions were fired up. They were doing everything under the sun. They were faking punts, faking field goals, doing weird plays, going for it on 4th down. They gave everything they could to go out there and play well, and they led for a lot in the first half. So that was a great bet. And to Devin's point, I mean, I could see why you would think the Ravens are going to win. I really like the Bengals because not so much because I have the Ravens lower than most people do, but people aren't giving Cincinnati enough credit. I think now this week they're giving them too much credit, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I just think to this point, no one's given the Bengals enough credit to realize that this is a playoff team. I mean, I truly believe this is a playoff team. They play in a tough division, so we'll have to see. It's kind of like the NFC West of the AFC, but I really like that. And then Texans, I guess I got caught up in the whole, you giving that many points to a team, an NFL team. The Texans have been up and down as far as performance. We know that they're not a good football team, but 1 week they'll play okay, and the next week they stink up the joint. And I just thought the Cardinals would do for a letdown, and it probably had something to do with the fact that I said it last week. I had Arizona as my knockout pick for all three of my picks, so I figured they were going to make me bite nails. But I'm probably, if somebody's a 17 or an 18-point underdog, I'm probably going to take that 80 to 90% of the time.
And you're going to win a lot of those too, I think. It's just, but you don't see them very often, and there's a reason for that. I'm struggling, and that Fresno State Nevada pick is a good example of that. I'm making some bad picks, no doubt about it. I'm also not catching any sort of breaks in the close games. This was one where Fresno State controlled that game throughout. They had a double-digit lead most of the game, and then Nevada scores. Nevada gets within 8. Gets a turnover, gets the ball back, and goes down and scores and misses the 2-pointer. And so Fresno State won by 2. And that's when you have -3.5, that's exactly what you don't want. It's like, well, just go ahead and tie the game and give me a chance to cover this thing in overtime, or make Fresno State go down and have to score again. But instead, Fresno State had a 2-point lead. They just ran the clock out. And if you have -3.5, that's where you get killed. And so I'm catching some bad breaks. It's, you know what? It happens. It's sports gambling. Nobody is up all the time, and so I'm going to ride this out, and I will survive this. I'm still ahead of Jim anyway.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, I will. In fact, I'm only just barely below where we started at 2,000. Let's move on to our week 8. Let's move on to our best bets. And interesting, we all picked something either tonight or tomorrow, so we're getting an early start. Devin, I'll let you go first. You went with the Friday night college game and over 58 in Nevada. That just sounds like a high-scoring game, Nevada against UNLV.
Well, UNLV's defense isn't that great. Nevada has been putting up a ton of points this year. I just think, both teams are, coming off of tough losses. So Nevada's a pretty high-scoring team. In general, UNLV has fared well in the first half, so scored a ton of points in the first half, kind of fizzled in the second half, but I just envision this game easily hitting over on 58. I mean, just the Fresno State Nevada game was 60-plus points. So, UNLV is a little bit of a worse team than Fresno State. So I think that was a pretty easy bet for me.
UNLV still hadn't won yet. They've come close several times, but still one of the nation's winless teams. Jim, we talked about the Saints a lot, but just to expound the point.
Well, first off, it scares me that we all like the Saints. So that makes me a little nervous right there. But I think this is the most that I've put big bucks wise on one single game. Now I've bet more on a teaser and lost, obviously. But look, I think that this is, to me, one of the better plays of the year, if for nothing else, because we talked about it, because of the value that you're getting. And the value that you're getting on the Saints, you're basically, to me, getting a 2.5 to 3 point gift. I mean, the Saints should be 3-point underdogs at worst, in my opinion here. And so you're getting a good value. I think that Jameis Winston's be able to throw the deep pass. They're not going to have the dropsies like they had last week. The ball's not going to be wet. The dome's going to be loud. They're going to be wearing silly costumes. They're going to hit Tom Brady. So, he's going to get his for sure. And he'll find a way to get his, but so will the Saints. And I don't think the Bucs will be able to clamp down on this running game as much as they usually do. They're only giving up somewhere in the neighborhood of 63 to 64 rushing yards a game. I think the Saints will be able to get 90 or 100, especially if Mark Ingram plays. I mean, obviously he's in football shape, and he knows the playbook, so he doesn't need a lot of prep time. So, look, I think the Saints are in a good place here, and really I wish I had the oomph to even pick the money line, which I have in real life, I guess, but not in big bucks.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, it just feels like a close game to me. I'll be in the Dome on Sunday. I don't know if I told you guys that, so I'm pumped. I think it'll be fun. It's the game of the year so far for the Saints, and I think getting them with 5.5 points is a good value. I went with tonight's game. I thought about taking the Packers. We talked at the open about how big this line was, 6.5 points. Aaron Rodgers getting 6.5 points. I'll take my chances. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought the Packers defense, on paper, it's been better this year, but you look at some of the teams they've played, the Saints, who have not been great offensively, and they give up a ton to them. Then they played, Washington, Detroit, Chicago. They haven't, Cincinnati, but they probably should have lost that game. They haven't played a lot of great offenses. Now they're going to play Arizona without their defensive coordinator. I just think this is a game where both teams put up big points. I could easily see this thing finishing up in the neighborhood of like a 34-28, a 34-31. And to me, 50.5, it's a high line for the NFL, is not nearly high enough. I think both teams score more than 20. And if both teams score more than 20, you got a pretty good shot at getting up to 51. So that's my best bet of the week. And it's tonight. So let's look at the rest of the picks. Devin, we talked about Nevada, UNLV. You like Tulane against Cincinnati. That's interesting because Tulane's taken it on the chin quite a few times this year.
Yeah, this one was a tough one, but just the 25 points, I don't know. I don't know if I feel confident that Cincinnati is going to cover that line. Like, I know they have to kind of in their mindset, they have to win by multiple touchdowns for kind of their playoff resume, but Tulane is just a pesky team. That I just feel like they'll be able to cover that 25-point line. Like, they still might lose by 21, 24 points, but I think 25 was just a bit much for me. So that's why I took Tulane there. We talked about the Nevada UNLV game as well. I didn't go too much on NFL. I thought, that's not where I'm successful at. But I feel like giving the Rams 14.5 against the Texans, I feel like they can do that. I mean, the Rams coming off a game they probably should have beat the Lions by more than they did, but they didn't. So I feel like they're going to come out motivated, ready to play, etc. But yeah, those are some of the best ones. And then I picked the under in the Penn State-Ohio State game. Penn State, I know they're big underdogs in this game. I think their defense is good enough to contain Ohio State's offense and make this not a track meet type of game. Like, they still might lose by double digits, but I don't think Ohio State's offense is going to be able to shred Penn State's defense like have been some of the other teams in the Big Ten. Listen,
they went under last week with 9 overtimes and still went under. So betting the Penn State under, not a bad idea there. I kind of like that. I know Ohio State scores a lot, but I don't think Penn State's had a single game even get to 50 this year, much less 60. So that is an interesting total there. Jim Derry, as we said, he's beginning the climb back up at least toward 1,500, if not back up toward where we started just yet. Some interesting picks in here, starting with the Packers money line tonight.
I'm just lulling y'all to sleep, and I'm finally starting to wake up a little bit. Now, I really do like the Packers tonight. I like I said before, look, it comes down to Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he cares who he's throwing to. He's still got Aaron Jones. He's still got A.J. Dillon. The Cardinals have been okay against the run, but I'm betting on Aaron Rodgers. That's solely what that's about. Just going through and picking out a couple others that I really like. My big underdog of the week parlay, I think the Jaguars went straight up. I really do. Seattle just – I don't know. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has played a lot better. He's only thrown 1 pick over his last 3 games, even though he has 8 for the season. I really like them. And then the Jets, I think this is a game where they show up, and Cincinnati, to me, is given too many points. Finally, it's catching up, and Aunt Mabel realized how good Cincinnati is, so – her and Drunk Joe are all over the Bengals this week, and the Jets stink. And we saw what the Jets did with Tennessee a few weeks ago. I think this is one of those games where they make Cincinnati sweat. It would not shock me at all if the Jets won that straight up. And then my teaser of the week, I really like this one a lot. And I almost wish I would have put a little bit more on it, but I didn't have the oomph to do it. The Bears over 33.5. I thought that line, that over under total was just way too low, even at 39.5. It started at 43, so I went and checked the weather, and no, it has nothing to do with the weather. It's supposed to be sunny, not even windy. Temps around 58 degrees, so I don't get it at all. Neither the Bears nor the 49ers defense is all that good. It's okay. I mean, they're okay defenses, but are we thinking about these defenses of old? So that line that over-under made no sense to me. And then Cowboys Vikings under 61. Again, here's a game where you're talking about way too many points, I think, being given up. And we know Dallas has scored a ton of points, but something about this game kind of smelled. I didn't like the line at all. And I think this is going to be a way lower scoring game than people think, especially with both teams having a week off and get themselves ready. It's going to be more like kind of a week one kind of game. I think this game is either in the high 40s or low 50s. I love that teaser there.
All right. And the Chiefs on Monday night, you've been fading the Chiefs a lot, but finally time for them to bounce back. And it may be what you say is the public is finally fading them. Yeah.
Yeah. If they're going to bounce back, it's here. And then you take that hook off of there at 10. I didn't love them, but I still would have bet them. And, if you push, you push. At 10.5, I wouldn't have touched it. But to me, and it's not a lot, it's just a $30 bet. But I think 9.5. Look, this is the week to find out. And I'm betting on the Chiefs. If they lose this game, they're as close to toast as they possibly can. This isn't the first time the Chiefs have gone through a lull in the Andy Reid era. It's actually the third time that they've had a little run like this. Something tells me that this is the week that they start picking it up. Everybody's down on them. Nobody believes them. I really like them this week. And the Giants kind of overperformed last week going across country, and they're still super banged up. So they don't really – as bad as the Chiefs secondary has been, I don't know that the Giants have the weapons to go deep on them.
All right. Well, speaking of bouncing back, I got to bounce back. I'm down below 2,000, so I've now lost money for the year. So here's a bunch of bets for you to try to get that back. We talk about the over tonight. A couple of games you guys mentioned. Devin, you had the UNLV-Nevada over. I think UNLV with 20.5 points. It's a rivalry game. They're going to pull out all the stops. They've been close to getting that first win. They didn't win a game last year either. It's been 2 years, and they're just trying to get to that point. I don't know that they win the game here, but 20.5 seems like an awful lot to me. Wisconsin -3 against Iowa. I think Iowa's on the downslope. Wisconsin's better than people think. Again, that one could blow up in your face because Iowa forces turnovers and Wisconsin's been turning the ball over. So we'll see what happens. But I do kind of like that. And then moving on to the NFL, a couple of picks. I think the Browns are being undervalued. I know they have a lot of injuries, but Dearness Johnson looked great last week. It didn't look like they missed their running backs at all. And Nick Chubb is supposed to be back this week. Baker Mayfield may or may not be, but that combined with the Cleveland defense against Big Ben, I like that bet. And then we talked about this a little bit. The Lions pulling out all the stops against the Rams, and they still lost by 9 or 10 points. And now this is the next week. I know a lot of people have been saying the Lions are going to get that first win. Boy, they play hard for Dan Campbell, and the Eagles are coming in wounded. It just feels like a spot where, okay, but the Lions still aren't any good, and people don't seem to realize that. They play hard. They're still not any good. And the Eagles are also kind of on a downslope and need to make a statement. So, and then the other one at the bottom there, you mentioned the Jaguars. I took the Seahawks, and I'm not super confident in this pick. But again, if we're looking at this just from a math perspective, Jim, this is saying that these two teams are basically even on a neutral field. And so the Seahawks are only getting 3 points at home. And even with Geno Smith at quarterback, that didn't seem right to me.
I think they are an even team on a neutral field. I mean, I think the Seahawks are one of the 5 or 6 worst teams in the NFL without Russell Wilson.
Wow.
And look, they have an advantage of they play at home. It's usually nasty weather, and they haven't even been able to win at home. I think this is Pete Carroll's swan song. I think the Seahawks are in for a 6-10 type or 6-11 type season. And even when you're not going to rush Russell Wilson back, it's certainly not if you lose this game. Why rush him back? Chris Carson's banged up. This is not a good football team. And people talk about they're in a must-win. They were already in a must-win situation. They're done. I don't care what happens. They win this game and they go to 3-5. So what? They still got to play the Rams, the Niners, the Cardinals, and a couple other really tough teams on their schedule. They're done.
Now, you may be right. And honestly, again, the Jaguars coming off a bye week, Seahawks are on short rest. Yes, it's cross-country travel for Jacksonville, but when you look at all those factors, maybe that doesn't matter too much. So it'll be interesting to see. and we shall see. And we're going to get the weekend going again with Cardinals-Packers tonight. If you want to get in on the action, NOLA.com/Caesar. Sign up for your Caesar Sportsbook app. Get the special NOLA.com promo code automatically when you go to NOLA.com/Caesars. You get a $100 free bet bonus when mobile betting launches. So we're all looking forward to that. And again, got Cardinals-Packers tonight. Oh, I did want to mention real quick before we go, the World Series tied at a game apiece. They have an off night tonight. They're in Atlanta starting tomorrow night. Jim, I know you had some money on the Astros. I put a little bit on them after they lost game one because I was getting, I think, plus 120 on them to win the series. So now they're back favored. It's an interesting theory. Is this a point where you now hop on the Braves, or are you just to sort of hedge your bets there and guarantee yourself a profit, or are you waiting and still have faith in Houston?
No, this isn't a place where I'm going to hedge. I really think Houston is by far the better team. Again, Braves come in, they've been resilient. They've been able to bounce back after losses, but they're not playing a Dodgers team that's super tired. They're playing an Astros team that's just as rusted as they are. And the fact is that Houston blasts left-handed pitchers, and there's quite a few left-handed pitchers. They showed it last night against Max Fried. And with Charlie Morton hurt now for the Braves, that is a huge loss for them. They're going to have at least one bullpen game, maybe two. I'll be honest. I'll tell you what, you want to take a bet that way you can make a little money. It would not shock me at all if Houston goes in Atlanta and wins 3 in a row. And
Atlanta is undefeated at home in the playoffs now.
Don't care. Again, if you want to take a little gamble, I don't know what the line is. I'd have to look. I'm guessing it's probably in the plus 400 range. If you want to take a little bit and plop it on that, or see what this, and I haven't looked, so I'm throwing these.
I'll bet it's higher than that, Jim. I'll bet it's higher than that for them to win 3 in a row. But yeah, it's certainly worth a look.
And what are the odds for them to win in 6? I mean, I'd look, but everybody thinks this is going 7 games. I think Houston is just a much better team. I don't like Atlanta at all, but I will say this: I'm rooting for Atlanta, even though I bet on Houston. And this is a weird thing. I can't stand the Astros. I don't care who knows it. You can send me hate mail at jderry@theadvocate.com. I hope I lose my bet. Go Braves. They got a lot of heart and they're fun to watch.
I know Devin's on board with that.
Yeah, that was funny. We'll see what happens. I think it's not impossible to win 3 in a row on the road. I don't know. I just feel like at least one game, the Braves will find a way to win at least one of their home games to at least send it back to Houston, give themselves a chance.
You would think so, but you're right, and I don't actually see these specific game odds right now, Jim, on Caesar. So I've looked, but I do not see them. But I'll bet you get close to 10-1 that they would win 3 in a row, maybe 8-1. But we'll see. It's worth a look. And we are worth a look. We'll be back on Monday with Odds and Ends. Monday afternoon, our weekend betting recap. We'll talk Saints Bucs. We'll talk the weekend in college football. We'll talk the World Series. We'll see if it's still going. Jim thinks maybe it's not going to be still going on Monday. And then we will be rolling forward into week 9 next week. So until then, this has been At the Book on bet.nola.com. It's brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. For Devin Jackson and Jim Derry, our thanks to James Carville for joining us as well. I'm Zach Ewing. Y'all have a good one now.